When someone survives human trafficking, rebuilding their life takes more than finding safety. There are physical, emotional, and legal steps. And for many survivors, there's another barrier that they don't expect until they face it: the financial damage traffickers leave behind. That damage often shows up in the credit system. Credit cards opened up under their name, bank accounts misused or overdrawn, payday loans taken out without their consent, utility accounts left unpaid, even evictions or medical bills tied to situations they had no control over. These negative marks can follow survivors for years, even after escaping the trafficking situation. And because credit reports are used for housing, employment, banking, transportation, and basic services, damaged credit becomes another form of harm. That's why federal law has changed. Survivors now have strong protections that allow them to remove credit report information caused by trafficking. These protections are enforceable, active today, and backed by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB. So in this video, I'm going to walk through what those protections are, who qualifies, how the process works step by step, and what survivors and advocates need to know to use them. Traffickers often control victims through financial identity theft and coerced debt. So research from international organizations and survivor advocacy groups show patterns that repeat across many cases. Accounts are opened or controlled by traffickers, leases and contracts are signed under pressure, loans taken out with no benefit to the survivor, debts, collections, and evictions that the survivor never chose. Before 2022, there was no clear dedicated path in credit reporting law to fix this. Survivors were often told to treat it like regular identity theft, and that approach usually failed because traffickers had real access to their IDs, social security numbers, and documents, and on paper the accounts looked legitimate. So Congress responded by passing the Debt Bondage Repair Act in December of 2021. The CFPB implemented it through the final rule that took effect July 25th of 2022. And those rules are now built into federal credit reporting law. The purpose is simple: a survivor should not be punished for the financial crimes and coercive debt created by their trafficker. So what do these protections actually do? The law gives survivors of sex trafficking and labor trafficking the right to have negative credit reported information removed if it resulted from their trafficking situation. That can include things like accounts being opened without consent, debts a trafficker forced them to take on, missed payments the trafficker caused, collection accounts tied to the coerced debt, unpaid utilities in a location the trafficker controlled, fraudulent auto loans or phone plans, bank overdrafts created by the trafficker, rental debts or evictions connected to the trafficking situation. So when a survivor submits the required documents, credit reporting agencies, often called CRAs, must quickly block those negative counts from their reports. So legally, these items are blocked from being furnished to anyone who pulls the survivor's report. That means the information won't appear on the credit report, even though the underlying debt itself still might exist with the original creditor. So this law applies to Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, tenant screening companies, employment background check agencies, and other specialty consumer reporting agencies. So if a company provides consumer reports, it has to follow this rule. Next, let's talk about who qualifies and what counts as proof. To use these protections, a survivor has to provide what the law calls victim determination. It's an official document confirming whether they're a victim of trafficking, and it can come from a federal, state, tribal, or local government agency, court, law enforcement, the Department of Homeland Security, certain immigration documents like a T visa or related notices, or an authorized victim service provider or nonprofit. A police report is not required. A criminal conviction is not required. Survivors do not have to prove the trafficking directly to the credit bureaus. The determination from an authorized entity is enough. In addition to the victim determination, survivors need to provide proof of identity and a list of the specific items on their credit report that were caused by trafficking. That last piece is important. Credit bureaus can't guess which items are connected. Survivors or advocates have to identify them so the bureaus know what to block. Here's how the process works from start to finish. Step 1, the survivor sends the documents. So the survivor or someone helping them sends proof of identity, a victim determination, and a list of trafficking related items on the credit report. The request can be submitted online. For example, Equifax has a section for trafficking survivors in their My Equifax portal, by mail, or started by phone and followed up with documentation. Each bureau requires a separate submission, so if the item appears on all three major reports, each one needs its own copy of the documents. Step 2, items must be blocked within 4 business days. So after receiving a complete submission, the credit reporting agency must block all negative items from appearing on the survivor's credit report within 4 business days. That 4-day deadline is one of the fastest response requirements in consumer reporting law. While those items are blocked, they do not show up in credit checks, don't affect housing applications, don't affect job screenings, and don't impact access to services tied to credit reports. This temporary block is there to protect the survivor from further harm while the Bureau completes its full review. Step 3, limited follow-up requests, only when necessary. So a credit bureau is allowed to ask for additional documentation one time, but only in 3 narrow areas: to verify identity, confirming the victim determination, and clarifying which specific accounts are connected. They cannot challenge the survivor's story. They cannot demand trauma details. They cannot question whether the items really resulted from trafficking. That part has already been decided by the authorized entity that issued the determination. If the Bureau requests clarification, the survivor or advocate should reply as soon as possible so that the case keeps moving. Step 4, final decision within 25 business days. So the credit reporting agency must complete its full review within 25 business days from the original submission, even if it requested additional information along the way. When they issue their final decision, they must provide a confirmation that the review is complete, an explanation of the outcome, a free updated credit report, a description of the procedures they use, instructions for appealing or correcting the record, and information on how to file a complaint with the CFPB. These aren't courtesy steps, they are legal requirements. Now let's look at a few examples so you can see how this works in real life. In example 1, let's say there's some coerced credit cards. So a survivor pulled their credit report and discovers 2 store credit cards, 1 bank credit card, all maxed out and all in collections. The survivor never used these accounts for their own benefit, their trafficker did. They'll need to submit their ID, a victim determination, and a list of those 3 accounts. Within 4 business days, those accounts are blocked from the credit reports, and within 25 days, the survivor receives an updated report showing the negative items removed. Their score increases because the derogatory marks are gone, and they're no longer being judged by debt they never chose. Example 2, bank account overdraft and fees. So let's say in another case, a trafficker uses a survivor's bank account to deposit and withdraw money, creating repeated overdrafts and unpaid fees that eventually lead to account closure. All of that shows up as a negative information in the banking and credit system. If those overdrafts and fees happen as part of a trafficking situation, they can be identified as trafficking related and removed from the survivor's credit report under this law. Example 3, eviction and utility bills. So some survivors are forced to live in housing leased in their name even though they have no control over the money. The trafficker stops paying rent or utilities, and eventually rent goes unpaid, utilities are shut off, and eviction is filed. Those records follow the survivor into tenant screening databases and credit reports. Under this law, if the housing situation was tied to the trafficking, those negative items can be removed not just from the big 3 credit bureaus, but also from tenant screening reports that landlords use. It's just as important to be clear about what this law does not do. The law protects what appears on the credit report. It does not automatically erase the underlying debt with the creditor. That means negative items can be removed from the credit report, but the actual balance might still exist with the lender or collection agency. In many cases, advocacy organizations or legal aid help survivors take the next steps, which might include disputing the debt directly with the creditor, negotiating a settlement or forgiveness, and addressing the coerced debt in civil court. The key point here is that survivors are no longer blocked from housing, jobs, or financial stability because of items they did not cause, even if separate work is still needed on the debt itself. There are a lot of misunderstandings around these protections, so let's clear up some of the most common myths. Myth 1, you have to prove the trafficking to the credit bureaus. False. The bureaus do not investigate trafficking cases. The victim determination comes from an authorized entity. Once that's provided, the bureaus must rely on it. Myth 2, this only helps sex trafficking survivors. False. Labor trafficking survivors are equally protected under the law as well. Myth 3. You need a police report to use this law. False. Police involvement is not required. Many survivors never report directly to law enforcement, and they can still qualify. Myth 4. Only the big three credit bureaus have to follow this. False. The law applies to all consumer reporting agencies, including tenant screening and employment background check companies. Myth 5. If it gets removed, it might just come back later. False. Once an item is blocked as trafficking related, it must remain blocked unless the survivor chooses to release their submission. The CFPB regularly reviews how credit bureaus are handling these cases. In recent examinations focused on how these trafficking protections are handled, they found several problems, including late blocking of negative items, asking survivors for documents that bureaus are not allowed to request, rejecting valid victim determinations, failing to send updated reports, and leaving out instructions on how to appeal. Because of these issues, the CFPB issued corrective actions and reminded all consumer reporting agencies of their obligations. For survivors, this matters because it shows two things. First, the law is strong and enforceable. And second, if a bureau mishandles trafficking-related requests, there are ways to escalate it. Filing a complaint with the CFPB is one of those options, and advocacy organizations can help with that process. To pull this together, here's a realistic scenario similar to what many advocacy groups see. Samantha is a labor trafficking survivor who escaped after 2 years. During that time, her trafficker opened multiple accounts in her name, overdrew her bank account, stopped paying rent on an apartment leased under her identity. When Samantha checks her credit, she finds several collection accounts, a closed bank account with unpaid fees, and an eviction record. With help from an advocate, she sends her state ID, a victim determination from a government agency, a list of every account and record tied to the trafficking situation. Within 4 days, the negative items are blocked from her report. Within 25 days, the bureaus issue updated reports removing those items. Her credit score rises. More importantly, when she applies for housing, she's not being judged by the debts and eviction her trafficker created. That's exactly what this law is designed to do. Remove barriers survivors did not create so that they can move forward. Now let's talk about what happens if a bureau breaks the rules. If a credit bureau fails to block items within 4 business days, asks for documentation beyond what the law allows, questions the trafficking or the victim determination, rejects valid documentation, or doesn't explain how to appeal, the survivor has options. They can file a complaint with the CFPB, appeal directly with the bureau, work with a victim service provider or legal aid to escalate the issue. Survivors are not expected to navigate that pushback alone, and the CFPB has shown it's willing to step in when agencies don't follow the rules. On paper, this is a process about forms and deadlines. In reality, it can be emotionally heavy. Going through credit reports, seeing accounts tied to the trafficking situation, and revisiting all those details can be triggering or exhausting. That doesn't mean survivors can't do it, but they often feel better supported when they don't have to do it alone. Advocates and organizations can help by gathering documents, organizing the submission, keeping track of deadlines, communicating with the bureaus, and just explaining the results in plain language. For many survivors, that makes the process feel manageable instead of overwhelming. For survivors of human trafficking, fixing a credit report isn't just about a number, it's about access and control. A corrected report can mean being approved for safe housing, passing an employment background check, opening a bank account in their own name, getting a car loan on fair terms, and not being held back by financial harm they never chose. The system still isn't perfect. Credit bureaus sometimes make mistakes, but the protections exist. They're active now, and they're getting stronger as enforcement continues. Financial harm caused by traffickers does not have to follow someone for the rest of their life. Survivors have the right to ask for these items to be removed, and the law is on their side. So if you're a survivor or you're supporting one and you need help understanding this process, look for reputable organizations and resources that specialize in trafficking and financial recovery. You deserve access to housing, banking, employment, and stability without being held back by debt or accounts you never chose. And if you want more clear, reliable explanation on credit laws, consumer protections, and the systems that affect your financial life, make sure to hit that subscribe button. My goal is to give you accurate information that you can use to make decisions with confidence.